So we're going to be going over some inventory tips and tricks, kinda. Now, this was actually a request, and I originally said that like it's going to be so personal that there's no point doing a video on it, and then I did like a 20-minute rant on how to do it. So yeah, there are going to be a ton of caveats which are going to include personal preferences, how much you play Descent, whether you play solo or multiplayer, or like your preference, and whether you're an avid raider / incursion player. Now, with all of these, there are going to be so many little bubbles where so many people can fit into, such as with personal preferences. Are you more leaning towards meta, or are you very anti-meta? Do you have a few meta builds, but you also like pissing around and making complete mean fun builds for you? Or are you just, fuck it, I'll do whatever just feels right at the time? You also might be like me, a collector, where you just like picking up everything that looks like it could even be just a tiny bit useful. So you pick it up, it goes in the stash, and it sits there for months until you're like, yeah, haven't thought of a thing for that yet, I'll delete it. And then the moment you delete it, and a fucking build idea just slams into your head, and you're like, why did I do that? Descent. The main reason Descent is going to be a problem here is because a lot of the things that, if you are like me, a collector, a lot of the things you are going to be collecting are going to be named weapons and gear. If you play Descent a lot, you can get a blueprint for all of them. So at that point, if you have a blueprint for all of them, there's no point collecting them, just craft them when you need them. Solo and multiplayer, these are going to be two very different things, just because the more to multiplayer you lean, the better the meta performs, and the more solo you are, the less people actually care, which is going to put your stat priorities on what you want out of a build to be very, very different. And then when it comes to raids, there's just so much out there that depending on how you want to do it and what you want to do could lead to very, very different results. Now, the start of managing your inventory is actually pretty simple. Make a minimum of 3 characters. This leaves you 1 character for either doing hardcore, if that's your thing, or Wony spams, if that's your thing. Use all 3 characters. That's like a key point. Gear all 3 characters and give each of your 3 characters a purpose. Some people see this as a bit of a negative. Oh, I've got to farm out all these builds for another character, bloody, bloody, blah. You actually kind of don't. You can still use your main character, but when you get like a decent item that you could think, oh, that would be pretty good on my second character, you just put it in your stash and take it out on your second character. So you can do all of the farming on one character, and you can outfit all of your characters from one character. For example, what I do personally is Character 1 is for solo play, Character 2 is for multiplayer, Character 3 is raids and incursions, Character 4 is my dear old Wony Run character. That is it, and they were all geared through Character 1. Next things is going to be items of use keep on you. This is going to depend on how much space you have on a character, but hopefully you can see I'm going through my inventory now. I've got a Nemesis here, as well as a Chameleon, an Eagle Bearer, a Chatterbox, a few other things, a Pestilence, that actually aren't part of any loadout I have saved, but I keep them on my character because you just never know what situation you might find yourself in. There have been a few times that despite the fact that this is my solo character, I still use it in multiplayer. I have a Ravenous, as I showed yesterday on stream. Ravenous is god tier in Legendary, especially Roosevelt. I've got a variety of weapons here that I can just mix and match that aren't necessarily part of a loadout. Maybe I'm enjoying playing SMG, but I'm not quite feeling the Ouroboros today for some bizarre reason, so I've got a Dark Winter there. That's not part of a loadout, but it's just there. I also would recommend that in terms of weaponry, always have a stage left or a lefty. As you can see here, I've got a stage left, and while actually recording this, I was like, why don't I have a lefty? Then I remembered I actually picked one up earlier on a second character that is in my stash, and I just move it across, just in case. You never know what is actually going to happen in your gameplay. So having a variety of options on you at all times that might not necessarily be part of a loadout is actually beneficial, genuinely very beneficial. And you find that if you do this across the board on like 3 characters, your stash space will very quickly diminish. I mean, you'll fill it up again in no time, but if you've not done this before, it's amazing how quickly you can just completely eradicate your stash. The moment I made 3 characters, I immediately went from like basically a max stash down to like 50 items, and I just collected a bunch of crap again because that's what I do. Not a very good MMR player, but it's amazing how many times Nemesis has saved my ass. Same as Sweet Dreams, especially if you're playing as like a healer and you've got like a purple rushing you, just quickly swap the Sweet Dreams and slap them, done. Same with gear pieces. One of the things that I recommend to all players is always keep a Dod City holster, a Coyote's mask, a tardigrade, a vial, and BTSU gloves on every character at all times. It is amazing how much these will come in handy at a variety of different points. It is also worth noting that in general play, especially if you do matchmaking, there is no point having typically more than 2 Coyote's masks. Sometimes more than 1, depending on the group and how you're playing. So having something like an extra Gruppo or Cheska mask on you at all times is also amazingly handy. I typically always keep a Picaro's holster on me as well, just in case. You never know. One of the things I would also mention as well is Ninja Bike, just simply because even if you do have like a few random bits and pieces here, there, everywhere, you can kind of make up like a random pseudo build just to help you get through a certain area. Like, I don't know, maybe you need to make up skill tier 6, but you don't actually have enough pieces, but you've got a Ninja Bike and you've got Technician, you've got Picaro's, well, there's like skill tier 4 basically immediately, depending on how your Picaro's holster is looking. Add in a weapon with Future Perfect and ta-da, you're basically at skill tier 6 with the capability to overcharge every like 90 seconds. So that's what we can do to alleviate pressure on our stash by utilizing our character. Now in our actual stash, there's a few things to take note here, and a lot of people are going to agree or disagree with this. Gear sets, Strikers, Cavalier, Foundry, Future Initiative, bloody bloody blah. These pieces, especially now with Countdown, are so easy to farm. And they only come with 1 roll, and you can typically just get what you want out of them near enough immediately. I did an entire video where I farmed out on normal using open world a Strikers set within 30 minutes, easily. So holding on to these in your stash is kind of a bit silly. You can get them very easily, very quickly, throughout gameplay anyway, so holding on to them, I would argue, is a definite no-no. Now we have actual weapons. Most weapons are pretty balanced. However, there are 3 categories where holding on to certain things is kind of counterproductive, and these are rifles, MMRs, and LMGs. I say this as someone who's basically got a stash filled with basically everything. As you can see here, there's my collection of LMGs. Realistically, the only 3 LMGs that are worth holding on to is the RPK, the L86, and Iron Lung. That is it. Everything else, you might as well just get rid. Whatever you think you can get out of like named items, putting the vanilla talent on the L86 or the RPK will always do more. But again, in terms of overall performance, the Iron Lung beats both the RPK and the L86 by over 20%. However, they're still LMGs. These are a very, very bad weapon class. When it comes to MMRs, depending on who you ask, you'll get an answer of sometimes 3, maybe sometimes 2 MMRs that are actually worth your time. And that is Nemesis and White Death. Sometimes people like to add in Mantis. I'm not an MMR fan. I'm not going to give an opinion on this. I just know that within the MMR crowd, Mantis is the iffy one. White Death and Nemesis are always mentioned. Some people mention Mantis, some people don't. Yeah. Any other MMR, you might as well just get rid. Then finally, rifles. And this is basically the exact same as LMGs, but replace Iron Lung, RPK, and L86 with anything that has the words M1A. Words, letters, M1A on them. Anything you think you can get out of perfect variants, classic M1A with the same normal talent will probably still do more, because M1A will itself, the actual weapon itself, will make up the difference. Now obviously I'm saying this as someone who's got a stash full of shit, but anyway, if you are struggling with inventory and stash space, hopefully this will give you a few little tips just to help alleviate a lot of the pressure. But in the meantime, have fun, good luck, and don't die. It's bad for the health.